There's something irresistible about a love story wrapped in mystery, but not every story unfolds in candlelit dinners or beneath moonlit skies. Sometimes love walks a tightrope, perched on the edge of wealth and suspicion, power and vulnerability. Imagine this: an Arab millionaire, a man of exquisite taste and unimaginable riches, who seems to have everything the world could offer, except the one thing money can't buy: the assurance of a heart that beats for him and him alone. In a world dripping with luxury, glittering diamond bracelets, sprawling mansions overlooking turquoise seas, and private jets that whisk him away to the far corners of the world, our protagonist stands on precarious ground. You see, what the world often overlooks is that beneath his expensive suits and confident demeanor is a man scarred by betrayal. To outsiders, he has it all. To him, there's always the question lingering like a shadow at the corner of his mind. Do they love me for who I am, or for the life I can give them? Enter her, a vision of grace, beauty, and poise. From the moment she steps into his world, it's as if the very air shifts around her. She's everything he could hope for: intelligent, charming, someone who can stand beside him not just as a companion, but perhaps as the partner he's yearned for. Her laughter, her effortless elegance, the way her eyes light up in conversation, it all feels real. It all feels almost too perfect. And that's what scares him the most. Because what the world doesn't see, and perhaps what she doesn't even fully understand, is the fortress he's had to build around his heart. Each stone laid after a betrayal, every wall raised after another relationship cracked under the weight of greed. He's tried trusting before, and it's cost him dearly. But could she be different? Could she be the exception to all the rules, the one who truly cares for him without a care for his wealth? This isn't just a story about romance. It's about the stakes of love at its highest level, a love story where millions aren't just whispered in gossip but woven into every part of the tale. And so, with a conflicted heart, our millionaire devises a plan, a test, if you will. It isn't cruel, it isn't vindictive. It's a desperate attempt to find the truth. Because for all his wealth, for all the treasures in his vaults, this is the only prize that truly matters to him. And as we follow this high-stakes journey of love and loyalty, I want you to imagine yourself in his shoes. Can love survive a test as daunting as this? Or will it crack under pressure, revealing intentions masked by smiles and stolen moments? This is more than a story. It's a mirror held up to our deepest insecurities, a reflection of the fears that even the richest of us cannot outrun. But here's the question: will she pass? Will she emerge as the woman who proves that love can conquer doubt? Or will her facade, like so many others, crumble beneath the weight of the truth? One thing is certain: the next chapter in their story will surprise you, captivate you, and leave you questioning just how far you'd go to find out who truly loves you. Stay tuned as we dive into this gripping tale of trust, heartbreak, and the ultimate test of love. Because in the end, it's not the yachts, diamonds, or private islands that truly matter. It's the power of the human connection. And that's worth more than all the riches in the world. Before we unravel the drama of this high-stakes love story, let's take a step back. To truly understand why this Arab millionaire, with every luxury imaginable, has found himself at such a crossroads, we need to peel back the layers of his past, the experiences that shaped him, the relationships that built him up and broke him down. This is where the true story begins, where you'll see that his wealth is not the fortress you might think it to be, but rather a gilded cage. Our protagonist was born into a legacy. From a young age, he was surrounded by the best of everything: tutors who spoke 7 languages, estates that stretched farther than the eye could see, and every door in life flung open with nothing but his family name. But with privilege came isolation. He didn't play in the neighborhood streets or share moments of vulnerability with childhood friends. His world was filled with adults teaching him what was expected of him, what it meant to guard his name, his wealth, his heart. "You'll know when people are real with you," his father would say, "but only after they've seen the zeros in your bank account." As he grew older, he learned to live by this lesson, though it cost him dearly. In his teens, He had his first taste of betrayal, the kind that leaves an indelible mark. A group of so-called friends turned against him, not for who he was, but for what they could take. This incident, though minor in comparison to the heartbreaks he'd later face, was a spark that set a pattern into motion. Trust came sparingly, often tinged with doubt. For a boy learning about the world, this cynicism felt like protection, but it would later become a barrier to true connection. Then came the relationships. First loves, as they often do, tend to feel like they'll last forever. For him, this wasn't an exception. She was beautiful, kind, or so he thought. She admired him in all the ways he wanted to be admired. She noticed the little things about him, asked about his dreams, made him believe he was more than his wealth. But cracks appeared as soon as their relationship began to deepen. What started as subtle comments about what he could provide, luxury trips, extravagant gifts, turned into expectations. By the end, their relationship was a series of negotiations rather than a bond of love. The final blow came when he overheard her, at a party, boasting to her friends about her golden ticket to the easy life. From that moment, everything changed. Relationships no longer carried the romantic ideal he had once dreamed of. Instead, they became a minefield of doubts. Was she smiling at him because she saw a future together? Or a future cushioned by private jets and endless opulence? Every laugh, every word of reassurance became something to be scrutinized, dissected, turned over in his mind as he searched for cracks in their authenticity. Yet despite these scars, our millionaire didn't shut himself off entirely. Something within him, the same part of him that craved love and connection, remained hopeful, even after years of heartbreak. But that hope was fragile, living under layers of caution and mistrust. He couldn't help but envy his peers, friends in simpler lives who fell in love without having to question whether it was their soul or their bank account that was cherished. They could offer love without fear, while he had to place his heart under lock and key. And now, let's talk about her, the woman who has turned his life upside down. She entered his world like a sudden gust of wind through an open window, unpredictable, undeniable, yet impossible to ignore. She wasn't like the others, at least not at first glance. From the moment they met, it was as if she didn't see his wealth at all, or at least she didn't let on that she did. She seemed genuinely interested in him. The books he read, the way his laughter often caught him by surprise, the dreams he harbored that had nothing to do with yachts or luxury cars. She spoke with an honesty that disarmed him. She had her own ambitions, her own stories of triumph and hardship, and a glow of independence that set her apart. Her laugh wasn't polished for his approval. It was raw, real. She seemed untouched by the allure of what he could offer materially. And that was what made him start to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be different. But his scars weren't so easily healed. While part of him wanted to lean into this possibility, to let her in fully, another part of him couldn't forget the patterns of the past. He had seen it too many times. Affection that looked genuine could mask greed far too easily. And so, the seed of doubt grew, slowly at first, then with urgency. Could he trust her? Should he trust her? Or was he simply setting himself up for another fall, another betrayal to add to his collection? Still, her presence in his life brought light he hadn't felt in years. They shared moments that seemed untainted, staring at sunsets, dancing in living rooms, laughing at their shared jokes. But every tender moment only heightened the stakes. Because if this wasn't real, if she wasn't real, then what hope was there left for him? How could someone who has everything find themselves so lost when it came to the simplest, most human desire, to be loved for who they are? And so, as the whispers of doubt became a cacophony in his mind, he made a decision. If she was to stand by his side, she had to be tested. Not as a way to trap her, not as a punishment for the women who came before, but as a desperate attempt to answer the questions that haunted him. What would she do if the money vanished? Who would she be without the glitz and glamour? And most importantly, would she still choose him? Not his lifestyle, not his title, just him. Now, as we move forward, the stage is set for the ultimate trial. The stakes are clear, but the outcome? That's something even he can't predict. And yet one thing remains certain. For a man who has spent his life chasing trust, this moment will either break the chains of his doubt or seal his fate as someone destined to live behind walls of mistrust forever. And for her, this is her chance to prove that love, real, honest love, can still exist in a world often clouded by material desires. As we peel back the layers of this intricate tale, the question lingers. Is love truly blind, or is it always watching, weighing, and waiting? Whatever the answer, it will change their lives forever. Because in the end, love is the only wealth worth fighting for. And so, the moment arrives. The moment where his doubts collide with his hopes, where his heart and mind go to war. The test, carefully crafted and calculated, begins to take shape. It's not just about discovering her intentions, it's about finally putting his fears to rest. But what kind of test could reveal the truth without breaking something that feels so fragile, so delicate? The millionaire's plan wasn't born out of malice. It was born out of desperation. It needed to be something subtle, something that wouldn't raise suspicion, but would allow him to see her truest self. He wasn't looking for grand declarations of love. He was looking for small, undeniable acts of loyalty, moments where she might show her heart without even realizing it. Step one was to present her with an illusion, one that would disrupt the narrative she knew, challenge the dynamic they shared. He told her that his financial empire was in trouble, that a string of bad investments had jeopardized his fortune. No more luxury trips, no more fine dining, no more diamonds sparkling under chandeliers. This revelation wasn't delivered with the flourish of a soap opera twist, but with the quiet vulnerability of a man bearing his soul. "I've made mistakes," he admitted, his voice heavy with fabricated regret. "And now I'm not sure I can offer you the life you deserve." The words hung in the air like a blade, sharp enough to cut through any illusion. Her response would be everything. Would she reassure him, tell him it didn't matter as long as they had each other? Or would the cracks begin to show? Small remarks, subtle hesitations that hinted at disappointment or retreat. The next moments were agony for him. He could feel his pulse in his ears, could hear the soft hitch of her breath as she processed the news. Whatever came next, he knew, would redefine everything between them. Her answer, it wasn't immediate. She reached for his hand, her touch as steady as ever, and whispered, "We'll figure it out, together." For a fleeting moment, he felt the weight in his chest lighten, but the test was far from over. Words are easy to say, actions are what reveal true character. In the days that followed, he carried out step two, a withdrawal, both emotional and physical. He began to step back from the relationship, leaving her to navigate moments on her own. Would she come to him, offering support, or would she grow distant as the prospect of a less extravagant life loomed over them? In this part of the test, it wasn't about creating artificial hardship. It was about watching her reactions when the fantasy began to waver. This phase brought more questions than answers. At times, she seemed unfazed, her demeanor unshaken by his apparent struggles. She cooked for him in his downsized apartment, laughed at his silly jokes, and seemed to radiate love even in the absence of excess. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, where uncertainty danced behind her eyes. Moments where he wondered if her mind was calculating an exit plan, searching for a way to escape what she might see as a sinking ship. Step three was the most calculated move of all. He introduced temptation, not directly but subtly enough that it wouldn't appear deliberate. A business opportunity arose, one that required him to travel to another city for several weeks. Before he left, he told her about a prestigious friend of his, a charming, wealthy businessman who might need some assistance with his social events. He floated the idea that she could step in while he was away, meet new people, and gain a little extra income since their finances were supposedly tight. What she didn't know was that the friend was an actor, hired to observe her actions and report back. He wanted to see if she would be loyal in his absence or if she'd entertain the advances of someone with wealth and prestige to offer. It wasn't just a test of fidelity, it was a test of where her true interests lay, on the man she claimed to love or on the allure of wealth and status that once again dangled in front of her. The days stretched on like a taut string, each one heavier than the last. The reports came in sporadically. She seems polite, but distant. the friend would text. She speaks about you often, says she misses you. And yet, there were other details that gnawed at his resolve. She lingered longer in conversations with the friend than he expected. Her laughter was genuine, yes, but was it too enthusiastic? Was she simply making the best of the situation, or was she exploring new opportunities? And then came the defining moment, a seemingly innocent invitation. The friend proposed a dinner at a high-end restaurant, a chance for her to unwind and discuss possibilities for her future. Would she accept? Would she let herself be swayed, even for a moment, by the idea of stepping into another man's world? The night of the dinner arrived, and he found himself unable to sit still. Alone in his home, his mind raced with possibilities. He wanted to believe in her, but the fear of another heartbreak clawed at him relentlessly. He checked his phone every few minutes, awaiting the update that would decide not just the night's outcome, but the future of his relationship, and perhaps even his faith in love itself. And then it came, a single message. It was his friend. The words were simple but charged with meaning. She showed up, but she left early. She thanked me for the invite, but said she had someone waiting for her at home. Someone she loved. In that moment, the chaos within him stilled. The test was over, but the repercussions of its existence would linger. Because while her actions spoke of loyalty and love, he was left to grapple with the guilt of orchestrating such an ordeal. He had questioned her, doubted her, when all she had done was prove time and again that she cared for him. Not his wealth, not his status, but the man behind the riches. Now the real test began. Could he forgive himself for putting her through it? But even now, with his answers in hand, the story is far from over. The test revealed truths, yes, but it also unearthed emotions that could not be ignored. Could their love, genuine as it seemed, survive the shadow of doubt he had cast upon it? Or would this final test become the very thing that unraveled them? This tale has tested not just her love, but also his understanding of what it means to trust, to love, to be vulnerable. And as they both face what's ahead, one question remains. Is love that has been tested to its very limits truly stronger, or is it forever scarred by the journey? Every love story has its turning points, the moments that tip the scales, where everything feels like it could either soar to dazzling heights or collapse entirely. For him, for her, and for us, those moments were raw, unguarded, and far more revealing than either could have anticipated. It was no longer about the wealth he could offer or the test she unknowingly faced. It was about their truth, the truth that no amount of luxury, no carefully crafted plan could conceal. Let's begin with her first defining moment. It happened on a quiet evening, one that felt unusually normal, almost out of place amidst the chaos of the test. He had arranged for them to spend the night in a modest cafe, miles away from the grandeur they'd grown accustomed to. This wasn't the sort of place they'd usually frequent, just a small, charming spot where the furniture was mismatched, and the menu featured nothing but comfort food. To her credit, she didn't complain. In fact, she smiled, bright and genuine, as if she relished the change of scenery. But as they talked, a shadow flickered across his thoughts. Was she performing, or was this who she really was? He tested the waters, steering the conversation toward hypothetical futures. What if this was our life? No grand estates, no luxury cars, just us, here, building something simple together? He watched her closely, his heart pounding as her eyes softened. She reached across the table, her hand finding his. If we have this, she said, gesturing to their clasped hands, then I don't care about anything else. For a moment his doubts wavered, but still the test wasn't over. Another crucial moment came when he presented her with an opportunity to walk away. Not directly, of course, but subtly enough that it felt real. He mentioned an old ex-partner, someone from his past who had recently resurfaced, expressing regret about how things had ended. She says she still cares, he admitted, his voice carefully neutral. Sometimes I wonder if I gave up on something too quickly. It was a lie, of course. The ex-partner wasn't in the picture at all, but the room fell silent, the air heavy with tension. Her reaction wasn't what he expected. There was no jealousy, no anger, no accusations. Instead, she looked at him with an expression that caught him completely off guard. Sorrow. If you think she's the one, she said softly, her voice trembling, I'll step aside, because I love you enough to want you to be truly happy, even if it isn't with me. And in that moment, the weight of her words nearly broke him. How do you question the sincerity of someone willing to let you go out of love? Yet the more she proved herself, the harder it became to ignore the guilt of his own actions. But the test wasn't about guilt, it was about revelation. And the most powerful revelation came when she faced temptation head-on. As his carefully arranged scenario unfolded, the moments leading to that fateful dinner told their own story. She had every reason to accept the invitation. An elegant evening in an opulent restaurant, accompanied by a wealthy and charming friend of his, a man with open promises of opportunities and connections. Yet she hesitated. She did attend the dinner, just as planned, but what happened there was a turning point neither he nor his hired friend could have anticipated. Her poise didn't falter. She carried herself with grace and politeness, even as subtle hints of allure were directed her way. When the friend pushed, offering vague possibilities of what her life could be like, she answered with clarity. My life already has everything I want, she said, and I'd rather spend it figuring things out with the person I love, even if it means less glamour and more work. With that, she excused herself early, leaving the dinner in the carefully laid trap behind. For the millionaire, receiving this report was a revelation like no other. It wasn't just that she had passed the test, it was how she passed it, with quiet dignity, loyalty, and the kind of love he had doubted existed at all. Yet as the truth unfolded before him, so did another truth. He had put her through hell to get here. What did that make him? A man desperately searching for love, or one who didn't deserve it? Then came the turning point they both didn't see coming. One evening, after all the pieces of the test had been laid bare, she confronted him, not with accusations but with quiet determination. She'd noticed the patterns, the subtle tests disguised as coincidences, the way he watched her just a little too closely, as if waiting for her to slip. You've been testing me, haven't you? She asked. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held the hurt he had been trying so hard to avoid. I understand why. I do. But if you need proof of my love, then maybe you don't love me enough to trust me. Her words struck like lightning, shattering the carefully constructed world he had built around himself. She wasn't angry. She was heartbroken. Heartbroken that the man she had given everything to couldn't give her the one thing she needed most in return: his faith. In that moment, he realized that the test wasn't just about her. It was about him, about his inability to let go of the pain from his past. And now the question wasn't whether she would pass the test, but whether their love could survive what it had endured. This turning point marked the beginning of a different kind of trial. It wasn't about loyalty or love. It was about rebuilding trust. Could he apologize in a way that meant something? Could she forgive him for doubting her when all she had done was show unwavering devotion? And more importantly, could they move forward from this, stronger than they had been before? Or would this test leave cracks that no amount of love could mend? Every relationship faces challenges, moments where trust is questioned and hearts are tested. But this one felt larger than life, weighed down by the stakes of wealth, status, and their intertwined emotions. As we leave this pivotal chapter behind, one thing remains clear. Love, even when tested to its core, is never simple. But the truth of it, when revealed, has the power to change everything. What comes next for them is anyone's guess. But one thing is certain. Their story is far from over. The stage was set, the test had played out, and now all that remained was the reveal, the moment that would bring closure or chaos. He had orchestrated everything, weaving a tapestry of uncertainty and temptation to find out what he needed most: the truth. And yet, as he prepared to confront the outcome, a single question lingered in his mind. Was this truth even worth knowing if it came at such a price? He stood in the same modest apartment where the test had begun, pacing the room like a man waiting for his fate to be decided. On the table in front of him lay the evidence he had gathered, the reports from his hired friend, the subtle observations he had made, even his own feelings from their time spent together. She would be there soon, and the moment would demand everything of him: honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to face the repercussions of his actions. When she arrived, her demeanor was as steady as ever, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she knew. Perhaps not everything, but enough to sense that tonight was different. As she stepped inside, she placed her bag on the chair and looked at him with a mixture of warmth and quiet determination. "You wanted to talk," she said, her voice calm but questioning. "So let's talk." He swallowed hard, his heart pounding. How could he even begin? The words caught in his throat, but eventually he forced them out. "I owe you an explanation," he started, his voice softer than usual. "I haven't been honest with you." Her expression didn't change, but she crossed her arms, signaling that she was listening. He took a deep breath and began to lay it all out. The financial ruse, the temptation, the test that had been crafted to uncover her true intentions. Every word felt like a weight being lifted off his chest. Yet with each confession, he watched her eyes darken, her stance stiffen. By the time he finished, the room was heavy with silence. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She simply stared at him, her face unreadable. "So," she said after a long pause, "you didn't trust me. Not enough to take me at my word. Not enough to see my love for you without testing it." Her voice trembled slightly, not from anger, but from disappointment, a disappointment that cut deeper than he had imagined. "I thought we were building something real, something honest." He reached out, his voice desperate. "We are, I promise we are. But you have to understand, it wasn't about you. It was about me, about the scars I've carried, about the fears I couldn't shake." His words tumbled out, raw and unpolished. "You've been nothing but good to me, and I've been trapped in a cycle of doubt because of everything I've been through. I needed to know if I could trust you because I didn't know if I was capable of trusting anyone." Her eyes softened, just for a moment, and he saw the woman he had fallen for, the one who had stood by him through everything. But her response wasn't what he expected. "You're right," she said quietly. "This wasn't about me. It was about you, about your inability to see what was right in front of you." She stepped closer, her voice steady. "I loved you, truly, deeply, without condition. But trust goes both ways. And I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly being tested, where my every move is watched with suspicion." Her words hit him like a blow, and for the first time, he truly understood the gravity of what he had done. The test, for all its intentions, had done more than reveal the truth about her. It had revealed the truth about him. He wasn't ready for love, not fully, not until he could let go of his own fears, his own wounds, and trust someone without needing proof. And yet she wasn't finished. "I'm not saying I don't want to be with you," she said, her voice softening slightly. "But I need to know that you're willing to work on this, that you're willing to trust me completely. No more tests, no more doubts. Just us moving forward together." She held his gaze, and in that moment, he saw a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild, not just their relationship, but himself. For the first time, he truly let his guard down. He told her everything, not just about the test, but about the pain he had carried for years, the heartbreaks that had shaped him, the insecurities that had driven him to such lengths. And as he spoke, he felt something shift. This wasn't about passing or failing anymore. It was about connection, about two people choosing to face their flaws and fears together. When he finished, the room was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with possibility, with a tentative understanding. She stepped closer, taking his hand in hers. "Love isn't about proving yourself," she said gently. "It's about showing up every day and choosing each other. I'm still here. I just need to know that you are too." His answer was immediate. "I am," he said, his voice steady. "More than I've ever been." And with those words, the tension that had hung between them began to dissolve. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, not yet, but it was a beginning, one built on honesty, vulnerability, and the possibility of something real. As they sat together that night, their hands intertwined, the millionaire realized something profound. Love wasn't about eliminating doubt. It wasn't about creating tests or seeking proof. It was about taking a leap of faith, about choosing to trust even when it felt impossible. And in that moment, he knew he had found something far more valuable than all the riches in the world, the chance to truly love and be loved in return. The reveal had been messy, raw, and far from perfect. But it was real, and sometimes real is all you need. The dust had finally settled. The games, the tests, the doubts, they were all behind them now, left in the echoes of difficult conversations and sleepless nights. What remained was fragile but real, a chance to rebuild, to rewrite their story one step at a time. But where do you begin when trust has been shaken, when the love you thought you knew has been put through a crucible of trials? The resolution was not a triumph. It was a quiet, bittersweet journey into the unknown. In the days and weeks that followed their climactic confrontation, things weren't magically fixed. The scar of the test lingered in the air, unspoken but deeply felt. She couldn't erase the sting of being doubted, and he couldn't ignore the guilt that came with orchestrating a test that had called her love into question. And yet, amidst all this uncertainty, one thing was undeniable. They both wanted to try. They both believed against all odds that their love was worth saving. For him, the resolution began with accountability. He started by looking inward, grappling with the fears that had driven him to push her so far. In the safety of their small, honest conversations, he admitted his flaws, his insecurities, his deep-seated fear of being used and abandoned. These admissions didn't come easily to him. He had spent his life hiding behind wealth, power, and carefully crafted defenses. But in baring his soul, he discovered something unexpected, her unwavering compassion. "We've all been hurt," she told him one evening, as they sat on a simple park bench, far from their usual luxurious settings. "But if you keep holding on to those wounds, you won't have room for anything new." Her words stayed with him, echoing in his mind like a gentle call to action. For her, the resolution was about drawing boundaries and standing firm in her worth. She loved him, that much was clear, but she also understood that love without mutual trust was unsustainable. "I need us to feel equal," she told him during one of their quiet talks. "Not you questioning me or me proving myself. Just us, two people who believe in each other." This wasn't about punishing him. It was about reminding him and herself of the foundation every healthy relationship needs. Her courage to speak her truth became the anchor they both needed, a reminder that love isn't about enduring tests, but about building bridges. Together, they began taking small but significant steps toward healing. The grand gestures of their earlier days were replaced by simpler, more meaningful moments. They cooked together in the kitchen of his modest apartment, spilling flour and laughing over burned toast. They walked hand in hand through the city's quiet streets, talking not about their wealth or plans, but about their dreams and fears. They began to see each other, truly see each other, in a way that transcended the material world that had once defined their connection. But healing wasn't linear. There were setbacks, times when his doubts resurfaced or when her patience ran thin. They argued, they cried, and at moments they even wondered if they were capable of making it work. But each time, they found their way back to the same conclusion. They were stronger together than they were apart. What had once felt like an unshakable divide began to soften, not because they ignored their pain, but because they faced it together, with honesty and resilience. And then one day came a moment that surprised them both. As they sat on the floor of their apartment, sorting through old photographs and memories, she stumbled across a picture of him as a boy. No expensive suits, no carefully maintained image. Just a child, grinning widely, his hair wild and untamed. She laughed as she held the picture up. "This is you," she teased, her voice warm. But as he looked at the photograph, his smile faltered. "I was so much simpler then," he admitted, almost to himself. "I think I forgot how to just be me." She set the photograph down and cupped his face in her hands. "That's who I've been falling in love with this whole time," she said softly. "Not the millionaire, not the man with all the answers, just you." And in that moment, something shifted. The doubts, the fears, the scars, they didn't vanish, but they no longer held the same power. Because for the first time, he saw himself not through the lens of his wealth or his past, but through the eyes of someone who loved him without condition. From that moment on, their relationship wasn't about what they had or what they lacked. It was about what they chose, each other, every day. The shadows of the test began to fade, replaced by a deeper understanding of what it meant to love and be loved. They weren't perfect, but they didn't need to be. Perfection wasn't what love demanded. Love demanded effort, compassion, forgiveness, and faith. And as for the test itself, it became a memory, a part of their story, but not the defining chapter. He learned to let go of the need for proof, to embrace the risk that comes with vulnerability. And she learned to stand firm in her love, to demand respect and trust as the foundation of their connection. Together, they turned what could have been a tragic ending into a new beginning, one built not on wealth or status, but on the quiet, unshakable bond they had forged through their struggles. In the end, their story wasn't about a millionaire or his mistress. It wasn't about yachts or mansions or the trappings of a wealthy life. It was about two people, flawed, complicated, but endlessly human, learning to navigate the complexities of love. It was about finding strength in vulnerability and hope in the face of doubt. And most importantly, it was about choosing each other every day, no matter what challenges came their way. So as their journey continues, we're left with the question, what would we do in their shoes? Could we forgive? Could we trust? Could we love with the same courage they found in each other? Their story is far from over, but it leaves us with a powerful truth. In a world that so often measures love by what we can offer, the greatest offering of all is ourselves, unapologetically, wholeheartedly, and without reserve. As the screen fades and their story settles into the quiet recesses of our thoughts, we are left with a series of powerful reflections. What does it mean to truly love someone? To trust them? And perhaps most importantly, to see them for who they are, not for what they have, not for what they can offer, but for the beating heart that lies beneath it all? The tale of the Arab millionaire and his mistress wasn't just a love story. It was a mirror held up to our own vulnerabilities and insecurities. It reminded us how easy it is to carry our scars like armor, protecting ourselves at the cost of genuine connection. His journey wasn't just about uncovering the truth about her. It was about discovering a truth about himself. That love, real love, cannot thrive when it's bound by fear or shadowed by doubt. Love demands risk, and trust demands courage. But in the end, isn't that what makes it all worthwhile? For her, the story was one of strength, a quiet, unassuming strength that often goes unnoticed in a world that equates power with wealth or dominance. Her willingness to face doubt with grace, to love despite suspicion, and to hold on to her values in the face of temptation was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She didn't fight for his validation. She fought for the possibility of love that could stand tall and unyielding, even when tested to its limits. And in doing so, she taught him what it means to love unconditionally. And then, of course, there's us, the spectators of their journey. It's easy to watch from the sidelines, to cast judgments or imagine how we might have acted differently. But the truth is, their story resonates because we've all been there, haven't we? Maybe not on the scale of yachts and jewels, but in the raw, deeply human way of questioning, am I enough? Or even harder, do I truly trust this person? Their story reminds us that these questions aren't weaknesses. They are the heart of what it means to be human, vulnerable, open, searching. And so as you leave this story behind, I want you to consider this. How far would you go to test love? Would you take the risk of putting it to the test, knowing the danger of breaking something fragile? Or would you take the even greater risk of trusting without conditions, of loving without guarantees? The answer isn't simple, but then again, love never is. Perhaps that's why their story lingers, long after the final chapter is told. It reminds us of the beauty in the messiness of connection, of how love can be both a battlefield and a sanctuary, a place where we confront our deepest fears and celebrate our greatest joys. It shows us that even when we falter, even when we stumble and scar each other with our doubts, love has the power to endure, to heal, to grow. And maybe, just maybe, their story can teach us something about our own lives, about the importance of letting go of the past, of trusting when it feels impossible, of seeing the people in front of us for who they are, not who we fear they might be. Because in the end, the greatest riches any of us can ever possess aren't found in vaults or bank accounts. They are found in the moments of shared laughter, the quiet reassurances, and the brave decisions to choose each other day after day. As their journey continues, filled with uncertainty and hope and promise, it leaves us with this. Love doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't come without risk. But if you're willing to take that leap, it might just lead you to something far more valuable than you ever imagined. So, as we part ways with their story, I ask you, what kind of love are you willing to fight for? And what will you choose when faced with your own tests of trust and connection? This isn't the end of their journey, it's just the beginning. But it's also a moment for us to look inward and ask ourselves what we want our stories to be. Until next time, remember, love isn't about perfection, it's about persistence, forgiveness, and the courage to keep writing your story, no matter how messy it gets. And that's worth everything. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that challenge and inspire you. And until our next tale, take care of your heart and those who matter most.